Under a full moon, the silver-haired man begs the woman in white to stay, apologizing for her loneliness. He declares that his former, incompetent self has been replaced by a much stronger version of himself. Determined to protect his loved ones, the silver-haired man recalls his vow to become strong enough to survive. As the woman in white walks away, a mysterious figure approaches the chapel where she stands alone. He pleads to reunite as a family, unable to endure their separation, while she weeps under her veil. Despite his emotional appeal, she firmly rejects his proposal to stay together and become a family again.
She reveals the dangerous truth that she and their companions are witches, making their union impossible.
A grim vision of execution by fire illustrates her fear that he would be killed for joining them.
Overwhelmed by grief, she admits that the mere thought of him being executed is unbearable for her.
She embraces the young boy and their creature, begging the silver-haired man to forget them and be happy. He remains silent and solemn, processing her heartbreaking request to be erased from his memory forever. Refusing to leave, he pulls her and the boy into a protective embrace as light fills the room. He emphasizes that the only fate he truly fears is losing the two people most precious to him. He vows to face all future hardships as a family, leaving her stunned by his unwavering devotion and kindness. She rests her head against him in a quiet moment of surrender as their confrontation softens. Looking at the chapel window, she questions why he remains so kind and acknowledges her deep love. Despite her love, she regrets not ending their relationship permanently to ensure his safety from her curse. In a childhood memory, young Alice witnesses her first public execution in a crowded city square. A hateful mob screams for the death of the accused while Alice watches from a high balcony.
Bewildered, young Alice asks her parents why the crowd is demanding the deaths of those on stage.
Her mother looks down with a sorrowful expression, unable to provide a simple, comforting answer. A narrative voice explains that witches are executed because they are believed to be threats to the country. Alice watches in horror as a child begs for help while being burned alive at the stake. The young girl is consumed by flames as the cruel execution ritual reaches its conclusion. Her father holds her, explaining that as nobles, they are legally required to witness these grim spectacles. He warns that failure to attend the ritual would lead to suspicion of them being allied with witches. The sight of a peer burning to death leaves a permanent and traumatic scar on Alice's young mind. Years later, Alice tells her maid Annie about the nightmares of the girl who perished in the fire. Annie justifies the executions, claiming witches nearly destroyed the nation and would have killed Alice's family. To explain the history of their hatred, Annie fetches a picture book titled The King and the Witch. The story begins with a king and a magic user ruling together before a conflict tore them apart. A simple misunderstanding between the two rulers escalated into a massive, world-altering argument. Consumed by fury, the magic user allegedly turned to dark magic to bring ruin upon the entire kingdom. The book depicts a graveyard, illustrating the lives lost during the magic user's rampaging destruction. The tale concludes with the king and his allies defeating the magic user to restore peace to the land. Afterward, the king declared all magic users evil and established specialized warriors to hunt them down. Young Alice wonders if the girl she saw die was truly an evil threat like the book describes. Annie clarifies that under national law, both witches and their family members are considered guilty of grave offenses. A chilling thought strikes Alice as she contemplates the terrifying implications of the harsh law. She asks if her parents and baby brother Colin would also be burned if she were a witch. Annie reluctantly confirms that the current law would demand the execution of her entire family in such a case. Terrified by the realization, young Alice breaks down in a fit of uncontrollable sobbing and screaming. Annie panics and tries to comfort the child, apologizing for scaring her with the grim legal reality.
Her father enters the room with her mother and Colin, announcing their arrival to check on her.
Annie takes the blame for Alice's distress, claiming the storybook was simply too frightening for the young girl. Her father scoops her up, offering reassurances that she is perfectly safe while he is there. Her mother thanks Annie and suggests they all have warm milk before bed to calm Alice's nerve. Baby Colin stares with wide, innocent eyes, oblivious to the dark fears plaguing his sister's mind. Seeing her brother, Alice reaches out toward him with a look of desperate, tearful longing. She hugs her family tightly, weeping as she expresses her deep fear of ever losing them to death. Reflecting on the past, Alice remembers her family's vow to remain together for all eternity. Her heart aches as she compares her loving family to those condemned to the fire. Shadows of those deemed witches haunt her thoughts, fueling her deep sense of pity. Visual transitions of lace and starry patterns signal the passage of time within the scene. She makes a soft sound as her eyes slowly flutter open to the waking world.
Oscar smiles gently at her, asking if she has finally awakened from her deep slumber.
Alice is startled as Oscar explains she dozed off during their conversation after they had lunch.
Worried, she apologizes for sleeping on him and asks if his legs have gone numb.
Oscar reaches out to touch her face, noticing the trace of a tear she shed. He asks if she had a nightmare, noting that she was tossing and turning while asleep. Gazing back at him, she explains that she was just remembering things from her distant past. Oscar reassures her that she can always lean on him whenever something is weighing on her. She thanks him as they share a warm embrace while sitting together on the plush sofa. A close-up shows the couple sharing a quiet, intimate moment as they lean toward each other. As they lean in for a kiss, a nearby vase of roses begins to tip over. She wonders why these traumatic memories have suddenly returned to her now after so many years. The title card introduces episode 2 of the story, translated as, "Because I love you, I say goodbye forever." Shocked, Alice remembers the tipping vase was a precious gift bestowed upon them by the king.
A loud crashing sound echoes through the room as the furniture is disturbed by sudden movement.
Alice worries about the broken vase, but Oscar pulls her back to keep her from touching it.
Oscar holds her firmly, his face inches from hers as he manages the situation with calm.
Oscar silences her concerns with a deep, lingering kiss as the evening light glows around them. He insists on cleaning it later and rejects her suggestion to call for a maid right now. Smiling, Oscar suggests they spend just a little more alone time together before calling for assistance. Alice rests her head on his shoulder while Oscar affectionately strokes her long blonde hair. Laughing, Oscar says he is glad she understands him after she notes she cannot refuse him. As they embrace, Oscar's eye glows with intensity while he mentions their wedding is occurring tomorrow. Alice finds it hard to believe how much time has passed since their initial childhood meeting. She feels a sense of powerlessness as she realizes she cannot truly say no to him. In their world, childhood engagements are mandatory. Oscar mentions his excitement for her upcoming wedding dress. Alice recalls how she was taught marriage is a duty, yet Oscar was always exceptionally kind. The children hold hands amidst a radiant glow, representing the immense love Oscar showed to her. At a formal dinner, the Roosevelt Count expresses his excitement for the union between their families. Alice's father, the Marquis, humbly responds that they are hardly a station befitting a noble house. The Roosevelt Count praises the Marquis's administrative prowess and his remarkable status as the king's aide. Alice's father claims he only strives to create an environment where the king can rule peacefully. The Count mentions hearing that Alice's father advised the king to make nobles witness witch executions. Alice's father explains that only those who share the king's ideal vision deserve to be nobles. Alice listens as her father describes the necessity of purging witches and excluding those with incompatible values. Young Oscar interrupts, telling his father that Alice is feeling scared by the nature of their conversation. Oscar politely asks his father for permission to take Alice out for a walk to distract her. Young Alice looks at Oscar with wide, tearful eyes, struck by his sudden and thoughtful intervention. Both fathers apologize for the frightening talk and permit Oscar to take Alice away to play. As they walk, Alice notices that Oscar's hand feels very cold while he leads her away. Looking back, she realized that Oscar was actually very nervous during that official engagement lunch meeting. A narration box clarifies that the flashback takes place during their post-engagement celebration lunch. Alice looks out at the sunny fields with joy while Oscar stands quietly behind her. Oscar points to a white horse galloping in the grass, introducing it as his horse, Spica. Overjoyed, Alice exclaims how cute the horse is and asks Oscar if she can pet it. Standing by the fence, Oscar says he is glad, which leaves Alice feeling slightly confused. Young Oscar asks Alice if she felt frightened by his father's talk regarding witches. Looking down at her hands, young Alice begins to confess her own dark experience. She admits that she cannot forget the pained expression of the girl executed long ago. Oscar gently reaches for her hand as they stand in the sun-drenched field together. He places a delicate four-leaf clover into her palm to lift her heavy spirits. Alice is surprised by the small gift, while Oscar identifies it as a lucky clover. He explains that carrying it brings good luck, gesturing toward his horse in the field. With a bright, cheerful smile, Oscar asks the young girl if she likes the clover. Alice exclaims her joy, noting that Oscar never spoke of witches to her again. They share a peaceful tea time together as their friendship and mutual affection continue growing. Despite his constant kindness, Alice secretly feels guilty for having nothing to give in return. As they grow older, she wonders if she is truly worthy of such deep devotion. They visit a dressmaker for her wedding attire while the town prepares for their union. Oscar holds her, dreaming of a happy family, while Alice vows to ensure his happiness. The couple shares a passionate, lingering kiss as the evening light surrounds them with warmth. Pulling away, Oscar asks if she has finally moved past that recurring, haunting dream. He knows it was the nightmare of the execution, leaving Alice stunned by his intuition. Alice apologizes for worrying him, confirming that the old trauma had indeed returned once more. She laments her inability to handle the grim, noble duties expected of her high station. Oscar comforts her, insisting she should never force herself to be someone she is not. Alice thanks him with a tight embrace, feeling safe within his unwavering and gentle care. Oscar reminds her of their wedding tomorrow, his voice carrying a new, intense emotional weight. He confesses he can no longer hold himself back, pulling her closer with desperate need. Oscar gazes into her eyes, asking if he can finally be as close as possible. Alice is startled as he gives her the freedom to refuse him if she wishes. She remains silent, her blushing face revealing her own deep desire for his intimate touch. She questions why these memories return now, even as she yields to her passionate feelings. A vase of roses shatters, echoing her determination to hold on to this precious, fleeting moment. Oscar sweeps her into his arms, carrying her toward the bed as their passion ignites. Her dress lies forgotten on the floor as they surrender to their love for one another. Oscar looks down at her with intense devotion, vowing to cherish her for all eternity. Alice softly confirms her consent, ready to share her life and body with him completely. She reflects on her desperate need to believe that their happiness would remain forever unbroken. Shattering glass and falling petals frame her hope that they would never be torn apart. A promotional page features recruitment details for the translation team and highlights their various roles. The title card for the third chapter introduces the next phase of their complex journey. Oscar leans over Alice, telling her how beautiful she looks in the soft, intimate light. Alice reciprocates the compliment, thinking about the immense happiness Oscar has always provided her. As they lock fingers, she feels an overwhelming urge to convey her love through warmth. She reflects on her past certainty that this joy would last, unaware of future tragedy. A vision of Alice weeping on a red field highlights her profound, soul-crushing loss later on. She reveals that during their union, she conceived a child destined to save the country. Years later, the scene shifts to a luxurious mansion where a maid prepares the master's bed. Now 23, Alice works in disguise, her face changed but her spirit still focused elsewhere. She diligently cleans the room, hoping to return to her child before he falls asleep. She senses a presence behind her as a man's shadow falls across the pristine bedding. The master of the house suddenly grabs her, calling her by her alias, Lilith. Alice remains calm despite the unwanted touch, asking her master what he requires of her. The lecherous man admits he simply enjoyed watching her perform her domestic chores in silence. He makes a revolting proposition, inviting Lilith to spend the night in his bed. The lecherous master dismisses his wife as no longer a woman while embracing his maid, Lilith. He tells Lilith that she is far more desirable than his current life. Laughing, the master expresses a crude desire to sink his teeth into the maid. Lilith remains silent, privately wishing she could return to her room and rest. She gently rebuffs his advances, telling the master that they must wait. Claiming her marital status is complicated, she successfully avoids the master's intimate pursuit for now. Lilith calls the master a smooth talker as he promises to dote on her soon. With a polite smile, she wishes her master a good night and prepares to exit. After leaving the room, Lilith stands alone in the hallway, letting out a weary sigh. Narrative text recalls the tragic events surrounding her scheduled wedding day with Lord Oscar. Alice remembers awakening as a witch on the very day of her wedding ceremony. She explains that her hidden nature meant death for her family and beloved if discovered. To protect her loved ones, she fled, magically altered her appearance, and became the maid Lilith. Arriving in the kitchen, Lilith is scolded by the cook for being late once again. The kind cook provides bread for Lilith's child, noting the boy must be very hungry. Lilith feels grateful for the private room and the food provided for her hidden fun. The cook warns her to keep the boy hidden to avoid trouble with others. Reflecting on her hardships, Lilith acknowledges that while life is difficult, she has been saved. She walks down the hallway, determined to find small moments of happiness for herself and her child. Lilith quietly peeks into her room to find her 4-year-old son, Noah, sound asleep. Noah wakes up and asks if she is late, while Lilith worries about having disturbed him. The boy insists he was waiting for her, claiming a gentleman never sleeps before his mother. Lilith laughs at his precociousness and suggests they finally sit down to eat together. Noah prays over the bread, expressing his deep gratitude for the meal provided to them. Lilith watches with a tender heart as the young boy happily devours his crust of bread. She gazes at her son with a mixture of immense love and quiet sorrow for their situation. Her eyes reflect a maternal pride as she cherishes this fleeting moment of domestic peace. Lilith reflects on the absolute necessity of keeping her identity and her son a secret forever. A look of sudden alarm crosses her face as a disturbance interrupts her quiet evening. Unaware of her fear, Noah pauses his meal to ask if his mother is hungry too. With a bright and selfless smile, the young boy offers his bread to his mother. Overwhelmed by her son's kindness, Lilith's eyes fill with tears as she watches him. She pulls Noah into a fierce embrace, promising to protect him and his secret no matter what. She gazes at him with intense determination, vowing to keep them both safe from discovery. Violent banging on the door startles them both as the master demands entry for Lilith.
Terrified, Lilith realizes her sleep magic failed and the master has tracked her to her room.
She hugs Noah tightly, her face pale with fear as the shouting outside the door continues. Acting quickly, Lilith instructs Noah to hide under the covers and remain perfectly silent. She promises to return immediately before opening the door to confront the demanding master. The master forces his way inside, grabbing Lilith's arms and stating his intentions are obvious. He traps her against his chest, insisting they continue the intimate activities he started earlier. Lilith panics, wondering if she should use her powers despite the risk of being discovered. From the bed, Noah's eyes begin to glow with a dangerous red light as he watches. A tense montage shows the master's assault, Lilith's desperation, and the boy's rising magical fury.
Noah's eyes burn with an intense crimson glow as he focuses his power on the man.
Lilith screams for her son to stop, realizing the catastrophic consequences of using magic here. Red energy fills the room as Lilith desperately tries to prevent her son from being exposed. The master is thrown violently back onto the floor, his face contorted with sudden, absolute terror.
He stares up with wide eyes, paralyzed by the shocking realization that he is facing a witch.
Screaming in panic, the master shouts that a witch has appeared in the house, summoning help.
Orders are barked to summon the extermination squad and execute the suspects immediately.
Oscar, now 25 years old, looks on with a cold and determined gaze. The story pauses briefly for a message about the translation team's latest recruitment efforts. A sudden, violent burst of pink magical energy erupts within the quiet mansion gardens. Lilith clutches her son tightly as they are engulfed by a swirling magical vortex. Realizing they are about to impact the ground, Lilith screams in fear during their descent. After the hard landing, Noah looks down in concern and calls out to his mother.
Lilith reassures her worried son that she is unharmed and thanks him for his concern.
Sensing approaching danger, Lilith realizes she must find a way to escape before being discovered. Lilith gazes at her son, realizing his latent magical abilities are their only hope for survival. Though she wished to wait, Lilith concludes there is no time left to hide the truth. Lilith explains they must escape together and asks for his help, leaving the boy confused. Lilith reveals Noah caused their sudden teleportation as a loud explosion echoes through the grounds. The pair freezes in alarm as a sudden noise disrupts their secret conversation in the garden. Violent vibrations rock the area as Lilith pulls her son close to shield him from danger. Lilith apologizes to her frightened son, wishing she could explain their dire situation more clearly. Lilith promises to protect him despite the fear, urging him to be brave for a moment. Armed guards surround the pair as Lilith asks her son to stand strong by her side. A guard accuses Lilith of being a witch and reveals the authorities have been summoned. The guards move in aggressively, seizing the mother and child to prevent any further escape. Lilith realizes with horror that capture means certain death for both her and her innocent son. Haunted by memories of past executions, Lilith vows to do whatever is necessary to save Noah. The guards leave them bound in a dark room, ordering them to wait for their executioners. The guards discuss their shock and resentment toward Lilith while preparing to report her discovery. A guard brandishes a blade, taunting Lilith now that her secret nature has been exposed. The situation turns violent as the guard threatens Lilith, who realizes her plans are being hindered. Noah weeps helplessly from across the room, far beyond his mother's immediate reach or protection. One guard makes a sinister threat while his companion warns him about the witch's potential powers. The lecherous guard moves in to assault Lilith, intent on discovering how a witch differs from others. Lilith suddenly speaks up with chilling calm, catching the guard off guard with her blunt dismissiveness. Her eyes flare with a dangerous crimson light as she warns him for interrupting her concentration. A massive telekinetic force slams into the guards, demanding they cease their harassment immediately. Noah wonders if the guards simply collided, but Lilith calmly assures him that everything is fine. Lilith feels a sense of relief as her magical preparations finally begin to take effect. She firmly grasps her magical jewel, focusing her energy for the next phase of their escape. With her magical setup finalized, Lilith turns her attention back to her son for the final step. Noah floats as Lilith reveals she was the one who threw telekinetically through the guards across the room. She explains to her son that her magical ability to move objects is called telekinesis. Noah is amazed that he can hear her voice in his head, which she identifies as telepathy. Lilith clarifies the telepathy belongs to a friend, prompting Noah to ask how she can use it. She warns him to remain silent to avoid alerting the guards and suffering even harsher consequences. Lilith explains she uses her jewel to channel a friend's power for silent mental communication. She instructs Noah to think his words so their plans remain hidden from any listening ears. Noah tries his hardest to project his thoughts, wondering if he is doing it correctly. Lilith praises his success and explains the mechanics of how the jewel facilitates their telepathic connection. Lilith reminisces about a peaceful time when they could sit together without the threat of death. Lilith finds Noah's hungry thoughts adorable, but notes she prefers mental silence from adults. Rushing their lesson, Lilith asks Noah if he remembers their sudden teleportation into the mansion gardens. Noah confirms his memory, and Lilith reveals that he was the one who performed the teleportation. Lilith tells Noah that he has the power to travel anywhere simply by wishing for it. Lilith tells Noah they must use his latent power to escape the mansion immediately. Lilith grits her teeth in pain, a fresh cut bleeding on her pale cheek. Noah asks if she is in pain, but Lilith smiles and insists she is okay. Noah begins to float as pink magical energy swirls around his small, suspended body. Lilith reflects on the difficulty of asking her beloved son for such a heavy favor. Lilith gazes intensely at Noah, telling him that he is her only hope right now. Lilith asks if he will grant her wish, and Noah promises to do anything for her. Lilith thanks him and begins to give instructions before a sudden noise startles them both. The mistress calls Lilith a rat, claiming she was an eyesore from the very beginning. The mistress vows to personally punish Lilith before handing her over to the subjugation squad. Lilith resolves to protect Noah from the mistress, even if it costs her very life. Oscar leads a group of mounted soldiers toward the residence where the witch was spotted. Oscar orders his men to capture the witch and her child as soon as possible. In a flashback, Lilith asks Noah if he feels lonely having only his mother around. Noah loudly protests, exclaiming that just having his mother is more than enough for him. Noah clings to Lilith's legs, begging her not to cry as she reaches for him. Lilith tearfully apologizes to Noah while holding him close during their quiet life in hiding. Noah wonders if his mother is sad because his father is not there with them. Noah gazes at his mother with wide, focused eyes, processing her deep and hidden sorrow. Noah vows to protect his mother from the bad guys since his father is absent. Back in the present, a house is attacked and Noah cries out for his mother. Lilith reassures Noah that she is okay while urging him to remain perfectly silent now. Noah worries as he notices that his mother's face is contorted with immense, silent pain. The mistress screams at Lilith to stop being silent and to cry out in agony. Lilith hunches over to shield Noah as the mistress prepares to strike her one. The mistress demands Lilith beg for forgiveness and admit she is a filthy, disgusting woman. Noah resolves to protect Lilith, who regrets forcing him to witness such a brutal scene. Lilith realizes she must awaken Noah's power immediately so they can both survive this assault. Lilith asks Noah if he wants to save her, and he desperately confirms that he does. Lilith tells Noah to imagine both of them vanishing from the room together and escaping. Lilith instructs Noah to remember their old house and pray for their safe return there. Noah prays with all his might to return to their home to save his mother. Lilith asks if he can do it, and Noah determinedly says he will try his best. Lilith encourages him to keep repeating the prayer until they successfully make it back home. Noah asks if praying will work, and Lilith confirms it while shielding him from danger. Lilith admits she could have used her own power, but no one needed this specific trial. Lilith reflects that Noah needed a desperate goal to finally learn to control his magic. She believes this was the only way to ensure Noah's growth and their ultimate survival. Lilith lies bloodied on the floor as Noah looks at her in absolute wide-eyed shock. The mistress stands over the fallen pair, laughing and wondering if Lilith is finally dead. The mistress scoffs at the weakness of witches, while Lilith lies motionless on the ground. The mistress stomps on Lilith, demanding more pathetic screams while Noah watches in mounting horror. Noah realizes that if he does not act immediately, his mother will truly die here. Noah understands that death means he will never see his beloved mother again for eternity. Visualizing a lonely grave, Noah's fear of losing his mother reaches a sudden breaking point. Noah's internal voice screams in denial as pink magical energy begins to erupt around him. The mistress is shocked as a violent, magical wind suddenly explodes from the two captives. A massive shockwave of pink energy throws the mistress and the guard violently backward. Noah looks over his bloodied mother as the room falls quiet after his magical outburst. Noah embraces Lilith, promising to protect her as they both vanish in a magical flash. Oscar rides his white horse through the dark, glowing forest, searching for the escaped witch. A sudden rustling sound in the bushes captures Oscar's attention as he remains on high alert. A knight accompanying Oscar asks if he heard something while they navigate the dense forest. Oscar suspects a magical beast, ordering his men to the mansion while he investigates the forest. Oscar rides alone through the dark woods, contemplating that the disturbance originated from around this area. A bright light erupts from the distant trees, drawing Oscar's focus toward the source of commotion. Oscar dismounts his horse and questions if he has finally located the source of the disturbance. Oscar draws his sword, prepared to confront whatever magical threat is hiding within the darkened woods. With a swift, powerful motion, Oscar slashes through the foliage to reveal what is hidden behind. Oscar's eye widens in shock as he witnesses an unexpected sight hidden within the forest depths. Oscar discovers a wounded woman in a maid outfit shielding a small boy from his gaze. Stunned by the discovery, Oscar speaks out, barely able to find words as he stares ahead. Oscar stands before the pair and asks for their identity while the boy glares back defiantly. Oscar gazes at the boy with a look of growing confusion, wondering who the child is. Oscar stares intensely at the young boy, questioning his identity as he notices familiar features. Oscar notes the boy's rare silver hair and suspects he might be an immigrant from elsewhere. Oscar realizes the boy's eye color matches Alice's perfectly, triggering a memory of her bright smile. The young boy shouts for Oscar to stay back while clutching his mother's bloodied, torn dress. Oscar is visibly shaken by the boy's fierce protectiveness and the sight of the woman's injuries. Noah's eyes glow with a dangerous crimson light as he warns Oscar not to approach his mother. Surprised by the display of power, Oscar asks if the child is the witch they sought. Noah defiantly acknowledges his nature, challenging Oscar's authority while protecting his mother with his magic. With intense determination, Noah vows that he will never allow Oscar to touch or harm his mother. Oscar watches in disbelief as the pair suddenly vanishes in a brilliant burst of magical energy. Desperate to stop them, Oscar shouts for the pair to wait and reaches into the empty air. Oscar trails off, standing alone in the clearing as he struggles to process the sudden disappearance. Oscar cries out into the night, desperately trying to convey that he is not their foe. Oscar stands alone in the woods, his cape billowing as he realizes he has lost them. Oscar collapses in a flower field, lamenting his desperate need to find his missing beloved, Alice. A pillar of light and bubbles rises from a dark pool, signifying a magical transition. Lilith wakes up with a start, her eyes wide with shock at her new, bright surroundings. A blinding flash of light consumes the scene, marking the completion of the teleportation spell's effect. Lilith gazes at the lavender field, wondering if they have actually arrived at a familiar location. Lilith identifies the location as her old village, while Noah looks up at her in confusion. Overwhelmed with relief, Lilith pulls her son into a tight embrace as he calls out to her. Noah asks if his mother is unwell, but she gently reassures him that everything is fine. Lilith smiles through her tears, expressing her joy that Noah's magical abilities have successfully saved them. Lilith praises her son's incredible feat, prompting a shy and happy giggle from the young boy. Noah worries about his accuracy, but Lilith confirms his success despite them not being at the house. Lilith reflects that this specific location must hold some deep significance to their past or future. Noah remains skeptical about their location, noting that he has no memory of the beautiful field. Lilith comforts her son, beginning to explain the history of the place they have just reached. Lilith reveals that the last time she was here, Noah had not yet been born into the world. Noah excitedly runs toward the village while Lilith follows close behind, keeping a watchful eye on him. The quiet village stands before them, bathed in soft light and surrounded by lush green trees. Quaint wooden houses with thatched roofs are nestled peacefully within the heart of the secluded forest. Noah marvels at the hidden forest village and asks if it is inhabited, but Lilith doubts it. Noah looks up at his mother with curious eyes, questioning why such a place would be empty. Lilith pauses, her expression solemn as she prepares to explain the tragic history of her home. Noah tightly grasps his mother's hand, seeking comfort as they venture further into the abandoned village. Noah asks if his mother is feeling pain again while they walk together. Lilith admits she is, her expression heavy with a deep and unspoken sorrow. Lilith explains her heart aches when remembering their saviors, while Noah repeats the word. Her gaze turns distant as she becomes lost in the shadows of the past. Lilith recalls the man and women who protected her and her unborn child. She tells Noah that without their intervention, they both would have certainly died. Lilith decides they must find a place to stay for the night immediately. Fearsome wolves with glowing red eyes prowl the darkness, making shelter a priority. Noah asks about their location as they enter a dark and creaky old building. The interior is a dusty, abandoned cottage that Lilith identifies as her former home. Lilith notes the cottage's remote location will provide them safe shelter from the storm. Chibi Noah's stomach growls loudly, causing the young boy to blush with deep embarrassment. Chibi Lilith giggles at her son's hunger, finding the moment unexpectedly cute and endearing. The pair enthusiastically resolves to go find something for their dinner in the forest. Chibi Lilith reassures Noah that she has already fully healed her wound with magic. They sit by a crackling campfire roasting fish while Noah leans against his mother. Lilith strokes her son's head gently after he falls into a deep, peaceful sleep. Her expression turns somber as her mind drifts back to a specific tragic day. Flashback shows a village in flames as the dreaded witch hunters arrive in force. The hunters relentlessly attack the fleeing villagers amidst the chaos of the burning town. A man calls out to Alice as they flee through the dark, rainy forest. The man vows to save Alice and the child she carries in her womb. In the present, Lilith weeps as she whispers the name Craig into the night. Lilith wonders if Craig and the others are watching over them from beyond. She introduces the sleeping Noah to her saviors, noting how much he has grown. 5 years ago, Craig galloped through the rain, carrying Alice away from the danger. On her wedding day, Alice believed she was destined to be the happiest bride. Alice admired her reflection in the mirror, feeling like the luckiest woman alive then. She radiated joy, completely unaware that her special day would soon turn into a nightmare. Her eyes shone with hope as she prepared to marry the man she loved.
The maid enthusiastically agrees that Alice looks wonderful, heightening the bride's excitement further.
Alice waits alone in her room, a sense of nervous anticipation filling her heart.
She recalls Oscar's suggestive whisper about the intimate moments they would soon share again.
The maid leaves to gather more people, leaving Alice to enjoy a final quiet moment.
A sudden, loud thud startles Alice, instantly shattering the peaceful atmosphere of the room. Alice looks toward the mirror in confusion as magical energy begins to swirl around. Her dress billows in a sudden wind as the room's objects begin to float. Alice's hand reaches out toward a bookshelf as the room's contents continue to fly. She discovers a book with a 4-leaf clover bookmark tucked inside its dusty pages. Alice gazes at the clover as the magical disturbance reaches a frightening crescendo. The door is hit with a violent force as Alice's eyes glow a dangerous crimson. Shards of glass fly everywhere as Alice wonders if someone is attacking her room. Her father screams her name in panic as a massive explosion of light erupts. The door bursts open, revealing her family staring in shock at the magical destruction. Alice stands amidst the debris, her magic out of control and her world shattered. She realizes she has become a witch just as Oscar appears in the doorway.
Her father orders total secrecy and commands that Craig be brought to the scene.
Alice collapses onto the floor, weeping uncontrollably as her bridal dreams vanish into ash.
Her father approaches his trembling daughter, his face full of grief and paternal concern.
He pulls her into a tight embrace, promising that they will never leave her side.
Alice weeps bitterly as her newly awakened crimson eyes reflect her mounting terror.
Alice's father pulls her close as she hysterically apologizes for the danger she has caused.
Her father insists she is blameless, but Alice remains consumed by her overwhelming guilt. Alice visualizes the horrific fate of witches, fearing her family will face execution beside her. She laments that her secret nature will bring ruin to her mother, father, and Colin. Alice's eyes widen in shock as the reality of her dire situation finally sinks in. Alice realizes her marriage to Lord Oscar would lead him to a fiery, tragic end. A servant interrupts the emotional scene, announcing that he has successfully brought Craig as ordered. Craig and the maid arrive, staring in absolute disbelief at the wreckage of the bridal chamber. Her father urgently commands Craig to take Alice and flee the mansion immediately for safety. Colin and the mother are stunned as they question the sudden and drastic turn of events.
The father realizes discovery means death for everyone, especially since Oscar's family are witch hunters.
Her father warns that Oscar would eventually detect even the slightest change in Alice's nature. He notes that, fortunately, they are currently the only ones aware of Alice's transformation. The father demands Craig hide Alice immediately, and Craig solemnly accepts the grave responsibility. Craig vows to protect Alice's life even if it requires him to sacrifice his own. Alice weeps as she continues to apologize while her family watches her with deep heartbreak. The family shares one final desperate group hug as they call out to Allison's sister. Her father hopes for a future reunion as long as they all manage to stay alive. He encourages Alice to endure this hardship and survive for the sake of their future. A horse neighs loudly, signaling that the preparations for their escape are finally complete.
Elsewhere, Oscar reacts with shock to an unexpected development regarding his impending wedding.
A messenger informs Oscar that an envoy from Alice's family has arrived at the gates. Alice's father orders a staff to pack her essentials and prepare for an immediate departure. Craig confirms he will have the horses ready at the back door for their escape. Her mother laments that Alice must flee while still wearing her beautiful white wedding dress. Her father insists there is no time to change as Alice tearfully apologizes to her family. The father takes the blame, apologizing for a society that forces them into such misery. He declares they must fight to survive as the first drops of rain begin falling. Heavy rain begins to pour over the landscape as a new, difficult journey begins. Craig gallops through the storm, carrying the fleeing Alice away to an uncertain future. Her father stands alone in the rain, offering a silent, final farewell to his daughter. The scene shifts as a fiery determination takes hold amidst the dark and rainy night. The tragic history of the witch and the hunter begins to unfold in the shadows. Her father's parting words echo through the storm, urging his daughter to survive no matter what. In a tender memory, Oscar gazes lovingly at Alice amidst a field of white flowers. The pair stands together on their wedding day, radiating happiness before their lives were shattered. Oscar reflects that Alice is more beautiful than anyone else in the entire world. Oscar's peaceful daydream is shattered when a frantic messenger calls out his name in panic. Oscar asks why the messenger returned without Alice's family, only to receive a grim response. The messenger presents Oscar with a formal letter sealed with the family's distinctive rose emblem. Oscar takes the letter with trembling hands, wondering what news his fiancée has sent him. A sense of profound dread washes over Oscar as he prepares to read the letter's contents. Oscar remains speechless as the weight of the situation begins to press down on him. Oscar suddenly bolts away, ignoring the questions of those wondering where he is going. The letter falsely claims Alice died from a magical beast disease to hide her true nature. Alice's father is shown writing the deceptive letter to save his family from the authorities. Oscar stands at the locked mansion gates in the pouring rain, finding the residence abandoned. The letter asks Oscar to forget their marriage ever happened for the sake of his safety. Oscar desperately searches the empty halls as the letter concludes with a final, heartbreaking apology. Oscar reads the letter and screams Alice's name in a fit of absolute heart-wrenching despair. The letter urges Oscar to forget his fiancée and live his own life happily from now on. Signed by Alice's father, the letter claims Alice has tragically died from the incurable mad beast disease. Narration explains a witch's curse originally brought the monsters and this terrifying disease into the world. The sickness causes agonizing symptoms like fever, hallucinations, convulsions, and eventually total delirium before death. Oscar recalls Alice's beautiful smile before volunteering for the elite witch subjugation squad to seek vengeance. He vows to personally destroy every witch to avenge the woman he loved with his own hands. The scene shifts to the military encampment where Oscar has been stationed for many long years. A close-up reveals Oscar's glowing amber eye as he suddenly snaps awake from his painful memories. He sits up in his dark tent, realizing the memories of his past were just a dream. Oscar holds Alice's green pendant, noting she still hasn't been found despite the many years past. He steps out of his tent, reflecting on the person who risked their life for the truth. He looks at the sky, wondering if his fallen companions in the afterlife find him useless now. Clutching the pendant, he resolves to finally find a clue to Alice's whereabouts on this day. Lilith stands alone in a sunlit field, gazing thoughtfully at the clear blue sky above her. Noah approaches his mother, curious if she sees something special in the vast and empty sky. Lilith admits she was hoping to meet a friend while Noah holds her hands with curiosity. She encourages Noah to find delicious fruit instead, prompting the young boy to cheer with excitement. Noah eagerly begins searching the lush green forest for fruit while Lilith watches him with affection. Lilith closes her eyes and smiles peacefully, her mind wandering back to a distant and rainy night. She reflects that she and a dear friend were once saved by the fruit in this forest. In a flashback, Craig checks on a feverish Alice during a stormy night near a waterfall. Craig decides to go search for food, noting Alice looks exhausted and needs immediate nourishment. Alice grabs Craig's hand, pleading with him to wait and not leave her side alone. She expresses deep gratitude to Craig for bringing her this far away from the initial danger. Craig realizes Alice wants him to leave her behind for his safety, but he refuses. In a low voice, Craig admits he wouldn't mind being executed if it meant staying with her. Alice asks what he said, but Craig quickly denies saying anything to avoid further emotional distress. Craig kneels before her, explaining he has a duty to fulfill the responsibility her father gave him. Amidst a field of glowing blue flowers, Craig solemnly vows to protect Alice's life forever. Alice worries that Craig is a good person whose life is being endangered simply for serving her. She desperately wonders if there is a way for her to disappear alone to save her loved ones. A sudden noise in the brush startles them, interrupting her dark thoughts and alerting them to danger. Craig immediately pulls Alice into a protective hug as they realize someone is watching from the shadows. Voices from the darkness confirm their location, signaling that their pursuers have finally caught up. Craig tells Alice to hide behind him while he prepares to face the approaching unknown threat. He stands firm, ready to protect his lady from whoever approaches through the dark forest. Silhouettes of two mysterious women emerge from the trees, watching the pair with an intense gaze. A montage of various characters and past events signifies a transition in the unfolding story. Alice wonders who the two women are as they reveal themselves fully under the moonlight. Craig questions if they are merely people living nearby or if something more dangerous is afoot. The two women stand calmly before the pair, their presence filling the forest with a strange energy. Alice senses a bad feeling as one of the women's eyes glows with a mysterious, dark light. A red moon hangs over the scene as a warning declares a witch has appeared nearby. Craig reacts with sudden alarm to the accusation, his focus intensifying on the mysterious newcomers. Craig prepares to defend Alice, his posture becoming aggressive as the tension in the air breaks. Alice shouts for Craig to stop, her face flushed with fever and mounting terror at the situation. Craig suspects the women are witches, noting it is impossible for normal humans to survive this forest. The purple-haired woman smiles, noting that Craig managed to figure out their true nature quite quickly. Solange and Margot officially introduce themselves, confirming to the shocked pair that they are indeed witches. Craig and Alice look on in complete shock as the mysterious women reveal their identities. Solange notes their surprise while Craig reflects on the deadly risks of revealing one's witch nature. Skeptical, Craig argues that true witches would never disclose their secrets to strangers so easily. Suffering from a high fever, Alice worries that her own status as a witch might be discovered. Solange explains that her true goal is simply to find more companions to join their cause. The purple-haired woman reassures the pair, stating that they only wish to offer them help. Solange notices Craig's defensive posture and asks him to release the knife he is secretly clutching. Solange reveals that Margot used telepathy to read Craig's mind and uncover his hidden intentions. Solange warns the blue-haired man that his thoughts are too transparent for his own safety. Solange teases Craig, revealing that his secret love for Alice is perfectly clear to the child. Identifying herself as a healing witch, Solange uses her magical powers to treat Alice's severe fever. Bathed in a soft green glow, Alice's eyes flutter open as the healing magic takes effect. Alice realizes she feels much better while Craig watches the display of magic in stunned silence. Solange asks if they finally believe their story now that they have demonstrated their magical abilities. Solange and Margot formally welcome Alice and Craig into their community as fellow witches and allies. Narration explains that the raspberry field serves as a boundary between their haven and the world. The group travels through the mystical barrier toward a hidden sanctuary where they can live safely. They arrive at the Village of Hope, where Dorian greets Alice as a newly arrived witch. A close-up shows the kind and welcoming face of the elderly woman in the village. Dorian explains that the village is filled with witches and their families who protect one another. Narrative boxes explain that Alice and Craig's lives would have been very different without this village. Alice weeps with gratitude, realizing she would never have raised her son without their intervention. She reflects on the pain of leaving Oscar, but found peace raising her child with help. Young Noah happily offers his mother delicious raspberries while they relax together in the sunlit field. Alice smiles warmly at her son, agreeing to share the fruit he has gathered for her. Narration reveals that Alice discovered she was pregnant shortly after being welcomed into the secret village. Alice enjoys a peaceful tea party with her new friends, Margot, Solange, and the modest Paula. The women discuss how Paula's specialized magic is responsible for keeping their entire village perfectly hidden. Paula becomes flustered as her friends praise her essential role as the guardian of their sanctuary. Text emphasizes that Paula's barrier magic is the only thing protecting them from the outside world. Flushed with embarrassment, Paula struggles to accept the overwhelming gratitude from the other residents. Margot uses telepathy to agree with the praise, while Paula continues to feel shy about her powers. Alice reflects on her good fortune, never imagining she would enjoy such a peaceful life again. A sudden memory of the day she realized her pregnancy startles Alice, causing a moment of shock. Alice reacts with visible distress as Paula watches her with a look of deep concern and worry. In a flashback, Craig expresses his alarm after returning to find Alice in a weakened state. Alice wakes up in a daze, asking Craig what happened to her while she was unconscious. Dorian offers her congratulations to Alice, leaving the young woman completely bewildered by the sudden news. The elder explains the situation while Alice listens with a look of growing confusion and disbelief. Dorian officially informs Alice that she is carrying a child, a revelation that leaves Alice utterly stunned. Craig realizes the child belongs to Oscar, the fiancé Alice sacrificed everything to protect from herself. Alice gazes down at her hands, trembling as she processes the reality of the new life within. A bittersweet memory shows Alice and Oscar together, a time when they were still happily in love. In her mind, Oscar's voice promises a happy future for them and their child, heightening her grief. Overwhelmed by her impossible situation, Alice weeps and wonders how she can possibly survive this trial. She laments that while she always dreamed of Oscar's baby, the current circumstances are far too painful. Alice fears her child will face execution as part of a witch's family if they are caught. Dorian comforts the distraught Alice, acknowledging the constant danger they face while living as witches. The older woman tells Alice that she saw a bright and wonderful future upon hearing the news. A vision of a happy future shows Noah running through the village while Alice watches with joy. Alice weeps as she is told her pain and joy will be accepted as they try their best together. Surrounded by kindness in the secret village, Alice resolves to raise Oscar's baby in this warm sanctuary. A month after the wedding, a morose Oscar sits alone in a tavern as someone asks what is wrong. Oscar's fellow knights note hunting witches is physically demanding, urging him to eat despite his obvious distress. Narrative text reveals Oscar lost his fiancée to disease on their wedding day just 1 month prior. A dark-haired knight mocks Oscar's depression over a woman, suggesting he finds someone new in town. The blonde knight scolds his companion's insensitivity as Oscar abruptly prepares to leave the table. Oscar ignores the questions about his destination, stating he is going to see his cute girl. The dark-haired knight leaves money for food, noting Oscar's haunted expression makes him a useless hunter. The blonde knight encourages Oscar to ignore the rude comments as Oscar walks away in silence. In a moment of quiet focus, Oscar whispers Alice's name as his amber eyes glow with intensity. Oscar meets a blonde woman in the street at twilight, apologizing for arriving later than planned. Paula welcomes him, and Oscar dejectedly reports that his work yielded no new information about witches. Paula apologizes for having no leads to share, her expression soft as she listens to Oscar's report. Oscar expresses his gratitude to Paula for helping him despite her being just a normal girl. Seeking comfort, Oscar embraces Paula, unaware of the sinister purple glow emanating from her eyes. Paula resolves to make Oscar the hero of the witch hunts, her true intentions hidden in shadow. Time passes in a field of flowers as the scene transitions back to the peaceful village life. Narrator text explains they spent tranquil days waiting for the birth of the baby in the village. A heavily pregnant Alice knits a garment while Craig notes that the birth is drawing very near. Alice playfully teases Craig about his embroidery progress, causing the dedicated servant to blush with embarrassment. Their quiet domestic moment is interrupted by loud voices calling out to both Alice and Craig. Solange, Margot, and Vivienne burst into the room, excitedly greeting the pair as they enter. The visiting women marvel at the baby's movements, noting the child seems happy to have company. Margot playfully teases Craig, who hysterically denies being the father of Alice's unborn child. Craig insists it is inappropriate to call him a father, as he is merely Alice's devoted servant. Vivienne scolds Margot for her unnecessary comments while Margot continues to giggle at Craig's flustered reaction. Solange brings the group to order, announcing that they have brought a wonderful present for Alice. Alice looks on with curiosity as Solange mentions they received special permission from Dorian for the gift. A floral emblem and stylized text introduce the next chapter of the story. Craig and Alice enter a restricted rose garden, noting that only permitted individuals may cross this boundary. Solange explains they are searching for a hibernating creature known as the child who only lives here. Alice watches with wide-eyed wonder as the search for the mysterious creature continues in the garden. Solange proudly presents a round, winged white creature, leaving the pair shocked by its unusual appearance. Solange identifies the small magical animal as a flower fairy, native to the enchanted rose garden. A text box explains that magical animals are creatures naturally endowed with various magical powers. Solange commands the fairy to open wide, and the creature complies by opening a massive mouth. Solange demonstrates her healing magic, explaining that the fairy can be fed and store this energy. The flower fairy begins to glow with a vibrant green light after absorbing Solange's magical power. Alice watches in amazement as the creature illuminates the garden with the stored healing energy. Solange explains the glow proves the magic was absorbed, while Craig remains stunned by the display. Solange instructs Alice to place her hand over a small injury on Craig's finger for a demonstration. Alice is told to pray for healing while holding the fairy to channel the stored magical energy. Concentrating deeply, Alice closes her eyes and prays for Craig's minor wound to be fully healed. A soft green light flows from Alice's hand through the fairy and onto Craig's injured finger. Craig stares in disbelief as his wound completely vanishes, leaving his skin perfectly smooth and healed. Solange explains the fairies act as vessels, allowing anyone touching them to use the stored magic. Margot reveals that the creatures can even store transformation magic, showing a glowing purple jewel. Craig realizes that even an ordinary human could use magic with these fairies, asking if such secrets are safe. Solange admits she usually fears telling humans who might betray witches to the dangerous witch-hunting nights. A mysterious figure stands amidst falling leaves, their presence marked by a single ominous word. Margaret stands in a vibrant field, declaring that witches must protect one another even at life's cost. Margaret apologizes for her delay, but Alice expresses profound gratitude for being welcomed into their village. The elder explains she waited for prophetic confirmation of trust before revealing the flower fairy's secrets. Paula notes that her foresight has become sluggish lately, causing significant concern among her magical companions. A somber vision shows the community mourning as their collective strength begins to wane with time. Looking deeply into Alice's eyes, Margaret prepares to deliver a revelation regarding her companion's unborn child. Margaret prophesies that Alice's child is a beacon of destiny destined to revitalize the witch community. A glorious vision depicts a leader uniting witches and humans to live happily under the sun. Margaret affirms that regardless of destiny, the child will always be a cherished member of their family. A bright light punctuates the elder's final acceptance of Alice and Craig as true, trusted comrades. Surrounded by roses, Margaret officially entrusts the couple with the collective magic of their people. Margaret asks Craig if he is willing to shoulder the heavy burden of protecting their magical legacy. Craig feels deeply honored by the trust placed in him to guard something so undeniably precious. Alice firmly pledges her commitment to the path ahead as her hair catches the morning light. Embracing the elder, Alice vows to successfully bring her healthy child into their hopeful new world. Dorian expresses her excitement for the future as she shares a joyful moment with her friends. A playful glance from behind a tree signals a moment of fleeting peace in the forest. Alice reflects on those lost while cherishing the happiness found in her current family and community. A gentle smile plays on Alice's lips as she contemplates the possibilities of what lies ahead. Alice dreams of a future where her family can finally reunite and live in peace together. Hopes for the future are suddenly shattered by the arrival of a terrifying and violent night. 2 months later, the village is engulfed in flames as a brutal winter storm rages overhead. A lone figure kneels in despair on the blood-stained snow amidst the ruins of their home. Paula reports that the village has fallen and Dorian has been captured, sparking immediate panic. Craig uses magic to bolster Alice, lamenting that their powerful barrier should have remained impenetrable.
Paula wonders if a betrayal occurred, her eyes narrowed with suspicion as they hide in the cave.
Alice feels trapped between her memories of Oscar and the current life-threatening crisis they face.
Alice realizes she is going into labor and believes her child is communicating through telepathic power.
Alice explains the baby is lending her power for an escape, shocking her companions with the revelation.
Paula struggles to understand the phenomenon as a knight is heard approaching their secret hiding spot.
A young knight discovers the witches in the cave, but his shock is quickly met with resistance. Dorian appears behind the intruder, using her powerful charm magic to distract him from his mission. The knight's eyes take on a heart-shaped glow as he falls completely under the witch's influence. The enchanted knight wanders away while Dorian's companions express their awe and fear of her magic. Despite their temporary success, Dorian's expression remains grim as she prepares for the inevitable next wave. Seeing many more knights approaching, Dorian resolves to go out and drain their will to fight. Dorian refuses to wait for capture, prompting Craig to step forward and join her dangerous mission. Alice calls out to Craig in distress as he prepares to make a final stand. Craig expresses his profound gratitude for the chance to protect Alice and Oscar's unborn child. Holding the glowing jewel, Craig requests permission to tap into Alice's magical life force for their defense. Paula restrains a frantic Alice as a massive, menacing shadow looms over the entrance to the cave. Alice asks Craig if he is truly certain, warning him they might never see each other again. Craig finds peace in his sacrifice, believing that protecting Alice's life is his highest honor. A massive wave of crimson energy erupts as the confrontation with the extermination squad begins. Craig shouts his final vow to stake his very life on Alice's safety amidst the chaos. A diverse character montage highlights the various individuals caught in the center of the conflict. Paula desperately holds Alice back as Craig's shadow marks his final departure to face the enemy. Alice begs Craig not to go as she watches him walk toward the cave's snowy exit. Fleeing deeper into the cave, Alice and Paula leave behind the scene of Craig's ultimate sacrifice. A purple-haired woman stares in utter disbelief at a sudden and shocking development. Alice reacts with pain as her pregnant belly begins to emanate an intense, glowing light. Surrounded by her companions, Alice collapses as the mysterious magical energy continues to surge. A massive explosion of red magical power suddenly illuminates the dark surroundings with blinding intensity. In the chaotic aftermath, a woman desperately calls out for Alice amidst the swirling magic. A knight discovers the scene, startling the purple-haired woman as the situation grows more dire. The purple-haired woman flees with Alice, reflecting on the cruelty of the current witch hunt. Alice huddles on the ground, lamenting that she is the only survivor of the tragedy. She continues her desperate escape through the forest, leaving the scene of the struggle behind. The scene shifts to a dimly lit dungeon where a night patrol makes its rounds. Oscar stands at a prison cell, shocked to find Alice's former servant held as a witch. Craig sits alone in the darkness of the cell, looking battered and completely defeated. Seeing Oscar at the bars, Craig smiles weakly and expresses his profound sense of relief. Craig is grateful to meet Lord Oscar in such an unexpected and desolate location. Oscar questions why Craig is imprisoned in a settlement where only witches were supposedly captured. Oscar begins to suspect a connection between Craig's imprisonment and Alice's mysterious disappearance. Craig reaches through the bars using a glowing magical jewel that leaves Oscar utterly stunned. Oscar is baffled, noticing that Craig is communicating with him through telepathy without moving his mouth. Craig urgently tells Oscar to remain quiet to avoid drawing the attention of other guards. Knights stand watch nearby, unaware of the secret telepathic conversation occurring inside the prison. Craig explains he is using telepathy magic to share vital information that must remain secret. He conveys a sense of extreme urgency, noting that he will likely be gone by tomorrow. Oscar questions how a man can use magic if only women are known to be witches. Craig reveals that anyone can wield magical power as long as they possess his special jewel. Oscar asks why such a powerful and forbidden magical object is in Craig's possession. Craig focuses intensely, his eye glowing as he prepares to ask a crucial, heart-wrenching question. He asks Lord Oscar if his love for Lady Alice still remains strong even now. Oscar passionately confirms his devotion, insisting his love for Alice has never wavered for a moment. He declares he could never love another woman, much to Craig's visible and profound relief. Craig delivers the shocking revelation that Alice is actually alive despite the official reports. He explains that Alice is a witch, but was fortunately not among those recently captured. Narration confirms that Alice managed to evade the knights and is not currently in custody. A grim vision warns that Alice will eventually be found and face execution at the stake. As other knights approach the cell, Craig insists there is one more thing he must say. His time for secrets ends abruptly as the sound of approaching guards echoes through the dungeon. Craig begs Oscar to fulfill his final wish as the guards prepare to take him away.
The guards roughly seize Craig, dragging him from the cell for a brutal interrogation session. Oscar shouts at the guards, demanding they stop handling the injured man so aggressively.
A guard dismissively orders the prisoner to start walking as they lead him into the dark. Craig's final telepathic plea urges Oscar to find Alice and keep her safe from harm.
Oscar watches in silence as Craig is marched away toward a dark and uncertain fate. Alone in the dungeon, Oscar clutches a glowing jewel while whispering his beloved's name.
Alice slowly wakes up to the comforting aroma of soup cooking over an open fire.
Disoriented, she looks around the unfamiliar room and wonders where she has been taken.
She opens her eyes fully, her blue gaze focusing as she tries to regain her bearings. Dorian greets Alice warmly, noting with relief that she has finally regained consciousness. Alice is surprised to find the elderly woman preparing food alongside a small, winged creature. She is shocked to learn from the elder that she has been unconscious for a week.
A fleeting memory of her and Craig running toward an exit flashes through her mind.
Alice desperately wonders what happened to her friends during the chaos of their narrow escape. Alice asks if anyone was with her, but the elder woman confirms she was alone. This is officially the worst way to wake up from a long nap. Alice struggles with the news while the elder warns her that she is currently too weak to move. The distressed woman attempts to protest, but finds herself too exhausted to continue her argument. Alice fears she has been captured, but the elder woman senses her suspicion and understands her fear.
The elderly woman reassures Alice that she has no intention of turning her over to witch hunters.
Alice reacts with stunned silence as she realizes her host knows her deepest, most dangerous secret. Introducing herself as Margaret, the elder explains she is a witch with the power to read minds.
Margaret clarifies that her mind-reading magic differs from telepathy by revealing the truth within one's heart.
She admits her age sometimes hinders her powers, though Alice's thoughts are currently very clear.
Margaret acknowledges the immense hardship Alice endured to protect her child, causing the young woman to weep.
When Alice asks for the truth, Margaret begins to recount the tragic events that occurred during her absence. A blinding flash of magical energy signifies the start of a deep and painful memory.
Alice is startled as a familiar voice suddenly echoes through the room, calling her name. She is overwhelmed with shock, wondering how it is possible to hear a friend's voice so clearly.
Margot appears in a magical vision, confirming she is communicating with Alice through her unique telepathic powers.
The atmosphere shifts as the heavy weight of the unfolding story settles over the room.
An elegant title card signals the beginning of a tragic and pivotal new chapter in the saga.
Margaret instructs Alice to touch the flower fairy to establish a two-way telepathic connection with her friends.
Alice frantically asks Margot about the safety of their companions while clutching the small magical creature. Margot's voice grows soft and somber as she prepares to deliver devastating news to her friend. Margot urges Alice to find it in her heart to forgive Dorian for the current situation.
Alice gazes back in confusion, not understanding why forgiveness is necessary or what has gone wrong.
A dark sense of foreboding fills the air as the truth begins to reveal itself. A horrific vision shows Alice's friends tied to wooden stakes, surrounded by an angry, shouting mob.
Dorian is among those captured, standing silently at the stake as she faces her final moments.
Margot explains that Dorian's final prophecy concerned the safety and future of Alice and her child. Dorian weeps and repeatedly apologizing, her heart breaking over the tragedy befalling their secret community.
Solange stands bound to a stake, looking down with a mixture of sadness and quiet resignation.
Vivian offers a brave and gentle smile, despite being chained to a stake for execution.
Margot accepts her fate with grace, her thoughts focused entirely on the friend who escaped.
Horrified, Alice asks what happened to Craig, fearing he met the same fate as the others.
Alice's heart shatters as she calls out Margot's name, unable to process the cruelty of the scene.
She listens in agony as the telepathic message continues to relay the final thoughts of her friends.
Paula is seen from behind among the crowd, watching the execution of her sisters in total despair.
Margot reveals that Paula blames herself for the barrier failing and asks Alice to reassure her.
Desperate and broken, Alice begs for the nightmare to end, but the vision remains painfully clear. A knight orders the execution to begin, and a lit torch is thrown toward the firewood.
A soft final greeting reaches Alice's mind as the flames begin to rise around the stakes.
Fire consumes the witches as Margot reflects on the tragic end of their peaceful life together.
Margot admits she once hated being a witch because of the fear and persecution it brought.
She reflects that life would have been simpler without magic, as the crowd cheers for their deaths. The blinding light of the execution fire serves as a grim finale to their sanctuary's history. Amidst symbols of their lost beauty, Margot finds peace in her final moments of existence.
Margot smiles through the flames, expressing profound gratitude for the magic that allows this final goodbye.
Her voice lingers in the air,
carrying the weight of a friendship that transcends death itself.
Alice weeps and begs her friends to survive, but Margot uses her magic to deliver their last messages.
Looking directly into the vision, Margot tenderly tells Alice not to cry for those she is losing.
The witches share a final memory of the joy they felt watching Alice's unborn child grow.
Doriane weeps as Margot explains they will watch over Alice from afar since they cannot raise the baby. In a final motherly request, Margot urges Alice to continue eating soup and stay strong for her child. Hexagonal boxes hope the left-behind magic protects Alice and her baby while praying for happiness. A final message of eternal friendship and love appears as the scene fades into roses. Narrative text concludes the declaration of love as glowing roses illuminate the dark background.
Tears stream down Alice's face as she softly calls out her lost friend's name.
Holding the flower fairy, Alice desperately pleads for her friends to answer her through the creature.
The flower fairy looks on sadly as Alice's despairing screams echo through the dark room.
Alice's blue eye widens in sudden shock as a sharp, magical sensation interrupts her grief.
Alice collapses while clutching her stomach, prompting the worried elder to ask about potential contractions. Margaret identifies herself as a witch and mentions her past experience in assisting with child delivery. The elder woman encourages Alice to find strength within herself for the sake of her newborn child. A newborn's first cry rings out against the backdrop of a vast and peaceful sky.
The sound of life echoes through the snowy woods surrounding the isolated and quiet cabin.
Exhausted but smiling, Margaret offers her sincere congratulations to the new mother on her successful delivery. Alice weeps with emotion while cradling her small, crying infant for the very first time. Close on the baby's face, Alice marvels at the sheer loveliness of her newborn son. Still crying, the baby reaches out while Alice gazes down at him with profound maternal love. Alice imagines Oscar holding their son, questioning if the child can truly find happiness in this world.
A dark, heavy transition emphasizes the grim reality of the child's future in a hostile world.
Alice reflects that being discovered would doom both her and the innocent child to a tragic end. Margaret notes the baby's cuteness, but the weight of their dangerous situation hangs in the air.
A horrific vision shows the child and his father consumed by fire, highlighting Alice's deepest fears.
Alice mourns her lost friends, lamenting that their peaceful lives were ended so cruelly and abruptly. The atmosphere becomes heavy and suffocating as Alice struggles to process her grief and current isolation. Sobbing, Alice questions the fairness of their situation since they only used their powers to help. Margaret emphasizes that their kind were merely healers who used their power to help others. Alice kisses her son's head, expressing that meeting him was her greatest and most painful desire. Pure white light surrounds the text, emphasizing Alice's desperate wish to finally meet her child. Alice asks Margaret if she believes a child born into such a hellish world can ever be happy. Margaret asks if Alice hates her parents, noting she wouldn't suffer if she hadn't been born. Alice looks at her son and firmly disagrees with the elder woman's pessimistic line of reasoning. Alice realizes that if she hadn't been born, she would never have met Lord Oscar. She reflects that she would have never met her child, her family, or her devoted servants. Margaret acknowledges that Alice's past must have been filled with truly beautiful and meaningful connections. The elder explains that past joy often makes present suffering feel even more acute. Margaret admits she has spent many years questioning the value of her own difficult life. The elder woman's eyes reflect deep sorrow as she contemplates the choices she made long ago. Margaret reveals her origin as an ordinary human with a family, leaving Alice utterly shocked. Narrative text explains that more than 50 years have passed since Margaret left her former life. Looking out toward the light, Margaret wonders about the current state of the family she left. Margaret explains she abandoned her loved ones immediately upon discovering her magic to protect their lives. Curious about the outcome, Alice asks the elder woman what eventually happened to her abandoned family. The elder woman reveals her former partner found happiness with a new wife after she left. Margaret admits her choice was painful, but insists it was the right decision for everyone involved. A flashback shows the hooded woman watching her past love from afar, embracing her solitary fate. Margaret reflects that she simply kept moving forward, trusting in the path she chose for herself. Turning the focus back to Alice, the elderly witch asks what her own intentions are. Margaret asks Alice to consider what kind of future path she will choose for her child. The elder witch asks if Alice can choose a life she will one day look back on proudly. Alice prepares to answer, the gravity of the decision showing on her determined expression. Looking at her sleeping infant, Alice prepares to declare her resolve as the child's mother. Alice gazes down at her newborn, vowing to do her absolute best for his future. Margaret smiles warmly and advises Alice to get some proper rest to make the right choice. A white bird soars through the sunlit sky, signaling a transition to a peaceful day.
Pure white feathers drift through the clouds as the atmosphere remains tranquil and bright. Narration explains Alice felt profoundly lonely after losing everyone she knew in the recent tragedy. Text boxes describe Alice's lingering regret over being unable to save her fallen companions. Despite her crushing grief, Alice finds new purpose in the life of her small child. In the town closest to Alice, Oscar resolves to honor the magic entrusted to him.
Oscar looks out with a solemn expression, his profile illuminated by the morning light.
A decorative text box declares a firm resolution to carry the heavy burdens of the past. Oscar walks through the town gates, vowing to raise the child with all his heart. Oscar reaches Versen, noting it is the closest town to the woods where the witches were cut. He recalls appealing to the subjugation captain to use the town as a base for his search. Oscar fears that if other knights find Alice first, she will be sent to the stake.
Staring with intense determination, the knight fiercely swears he will never let Alice be captured.
Holding the jewel, Oscar apologizes for not witnessing the final moments of his departed friends.
He clutches the magical amulet while promising to fulfill the heavy duty placed upon him.
Surrounded by roses, Oscar swears he will find Alice and save her from the knight's stake. Stylized text and floral patterns introduce the start of a pivotal new chapter.
Baby Noah cries loudly in his crib while Alice asks what is bothering the infant.
Alice struggles to soothe her son, noting he has already been fed and changed recently.
Smiling tenderly, Alice asks the baby if he was feeling lonely without his mother nearby.
Alice laments how difficult life has become since the baby's birth and the loss of her friends.
She reflects on the child's arrival while struggling with his refusal to sleep or stop crying.
Alice despairs in a frantic moment as the baby refuses milk despite her best efforts.
Alice's eyes fill with tears as the overwhelming weight of her situation takes hold.
Margaret enters the room, noting that the lack of sleep is making things very difficult. The elder witch offers to watch Noah so that Alice can finally get some rest.
A heartfelt expression of gratitude reaches up toward the bright sky as Alice finds relief.
Narrative text explains that Margaret, a fellow witch, has provided vital help and support. A simple transition panel indicates that more time is passing in the flower-filled sanctuary. Settling into bed, Alice wonders what her mind will reveal during her much-needed sleep.
Amidst shimmering lights, Alice hopes she will be able to see her beloved in her dreams.
A soft voice calls out Alice's name from within the brilliant light of a dreamscape. The scene shifts as the dream voice repeats her name, drawing her closer. Dressed in an elegant gown, Alice looks on with a peaceful and relieved expression. Oscar stands in a sunlit garden, reaching out his hand and inviting Alice to join him.
The pair moves toward each other across a vast field filled with vibrant, colorful flowers.
Alice cries out Oscar's name as she throws her arms around him in a joyful embrace.
The lovers stand together in the garden, surrounded by the beauty of the dream world.
Oscar gazes at Alice and smiles gently while asking if her feelings remain the same.
Time seems to stand still as the two lean in close for an intimate moment.
As they share a kiss, the dream suddenly shatters and Alice's eyes snap open.
Narrative text explains that her precious dreams of her beloved always end at that exact moment. Waking up in the dim room, Alice wonders how long she was actually asleep. A sudden sound causes Alice's eyes to snap open as she returns to reality. Baby Noah lets out a happy, gurgling laugh while surrounded by soft white flowers. Margaret explains that the infant refused to leave his mother's side while she was sleeping.
Overjoyed, Alice pulls her son into a tight and loving embrace on the bed. Alice reflects that having her baby and kind helpers makes her difficult life feel truly worthwhile. A small creature eats an apple, while narration reflects on the life and magic entrusted to them. The scene transitions to the sky as the text emphasizes the weight of inherited will and responsibility.
Alice stands with baby Noah in a field of autumn leaves, looking up at the beautiful morning sky. Alice and Noah gaze forward with determination, their eyes bright against the warm glow of the morning.
A sudden sound in the foliage startles Alice, prompting a cry of alarm as she looks around.
Alice sees Margaret leaning against a tree before the elderly woman begins to collapse from exhaustion. Margaret falls forward onto the ground as Alice cries out her name in a moment of panic. Tending to Margaret in bed, Alice apologizes for taking the bed while the elder admits she has caught a cold.
Alice looks on with profound concern as she listens to Margaret's explanation regarding her sudden physical weakness. Margaret rests her hand on her head, her face showing the strain and discomfort of her rising fever.
Alice urgently states that Margaret is burning up and needs to take some medicine to recover.
A text bubble reveals that there is no medicine currently available in the house to treat the elder. Alice reacts with wide-eyed shock, questioning why they have no supplies for such an emergency.
Margaret looks weak and weary, her expression reflecting the difficult reality of their isolated life in hiding.
The elder witch admits her age prevents her from reaching town, but Alice refuses to accept that. Determined to help, Alice resolves to travel to the nearby town herself to buy the necessary medicine.
Margaret watches silently, the worry in her eyes deepening as she contemplates the danger Alice faces. A text bubble warns that the voices of knights searching for witches can be heard even from their location.
Margaret warns Alice that being caught would jeopardize her safety and put baby Noah in extreme danger. Alice remains resolute, trusting in the magical charms left by her friends to keep her hidden and safe. Margaret looks on with a pained expression, sensing Alice's unwavering determination to help her regardless of risk.
Alice uses magic to transform her appearance, changing her hair color and eye shape to avoid detection.
Margaret remains silent, observing as Alice successfully alters her visual identity to look like a different person.
The elder witch tells Alice she can find money in the drawer to fund her trip to town.
Margaret tells Alice to use the remaining funds for herself, while urging her to be careful for Noah's sake.
Now disguised with purple hair, Alice promises she will return safely and begins her journey to the town. Alice walks through the town square, carrying a basket and successfully blending in with the local population.
She expresses gratitude at being able to purchase the medicine along with some food for their household. Alice's breath hitches in surprise as something unexpected catches her attention in the middle of the street.
Looking across the thoroughfare, Alice spots a silver-haired man in a white and gold military uniform. Covering her mouth in shock, Alice wonders how it is possible for Lord Oscar to be there.
Alice reacts with renewed alarm as she continues to process the unexpected sight before her.
The silver-haired knight stands in the center of the town square, his presence commanding and stern. Alice hides her face as she realizes her beloved is now a leader among the witch hunters. The purple-haired woman wonders why Lord Oscar is in town and wearing the extermination squad uniform. Alice questions if Oscar has actually joined the squad despite his known dislike for martial arts.
Decorative text transitions the narrative to a reflection on the history and legacy of House Roosevelt.
A memory shows Alice and Oscar together, noting he once dreamed of becoming a peaceful civil official.
Alice looks down sadly, wondering if Craig was arrested because he was suspected of being an accomplice.
She questions if Oscar became a knight because his family was under suspicion for their past connections. Cradling her child, Alice wonders what will happen if her actions have destroyed the lives of those she loves. A close-up of Alice's eye conveys the depth of her sadness and the heavy burden of her regret.
Alice expresses her desperate urge to ask what happened to the child's father and if Craig is alive.
Alice closes her eyes in pain, struggling with the conflicting emotions of love and the need for secrecy. Above all, Alice expresses her profound desire to simply talk to the man who holds her heart. She yearns to tell him about their beautiful baby and share a life together once again. A vision of domestic bliss shows Oscar, Alice, and their infant son as a happy and unified family. Reality returns as Alice's eye reflects her inner agony while she remains hidden behind her magical disguise. Narrative text declares Alice's firm resolve to protect her child from the harsh and dangerous world.
Oscar and the disguised Alice stand on opposite sides of the street, a vast emotional distance between them.
Alice internally declares her unwavering resolve as she prepares to face the difficult journey ahead. Lord Oscar is shown in a reflective state, his profile suggesting the weight of his duties. An elegant title card signals the beginning of a new chapter in the saga. Baby Noah's mouth is shown in a tight grimace as he prepares to let out a loud cry. Carrying her child, the purple-haired Alice reacts with shock as Noah suddenly begins screaming. Noah's cries intensify, leaving Alice in a state of panic as she frantically wonders what to do. Passers-by in the town square cast annoyed looks toward the woman and her loudly crying infant. Desperate to soothe him, Alice asks if Noah is hungry, while the baby continues his distressed wailing. Elise's alarm grows as she realizes the baby's crying shows no sign of stopping despite her efforts. Touching the baby's forehead, Alice is horrified to discover that Noah is running a dangerously high fever. Fear grips Alice as she notes that her son has never suffered such a severe fever before. Kneeling on the ground with her basket, Alice frantically reminds herself that she must find medicine immediately. She questions if adult medicine is safe for a baby, but knows she must act for Noah's sake. Overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion, Alice finds herself physically unable to move from her spot. A silver-haired knight approaches the kneeling woman and politely asks if she requires assistance. Startled, Alice looks up with wide eyes as a shadow falls over her in the town street. The purple-haired woman stares at the newcomer, her face etched with profound worry for her sick child. Lord Oscar asks if she is all right, while Alice recognizes her beloved despite her magical disguise. Alice explains the child's fever, prompting Oscar to express concern and wonder how he can help. Oscar asks if she is alone, and Alice confirms she is the only adult present while fearing discovery. Close to tears, Alice reflects that their brief exchange is already overwhelming her emotionally. Tears well in Alice's eyes as she struggles to maintain her composure in front of the man she loves. Oscar kindly offers to carry Alice's heavy basket as she tends to her crying infant. The knight suggests they visit a nearby hospital to get the baby properly checked by a professional. Alice admits she lacks the money for a hospital, but Oscar tells her not to worry about payment. Oscar urges her to focus entirely on her child's health while he handles the immediate logistics. Alice acknowledges his kindness, her heart heavy with the weight of her secret and her fear. Fearful for Noah's life, Alice admits she couldn't survive if he met a tragic end like her friends. Bowing deeply, Alice desperately begs the knight to save her son from his worsening illness.
Oscar leads the way with a gentle expression, while Alice follows him with a look of immense relief. Narrative text emphasizes that Lord Oscar has a reputation for never abandoning those in distress. As they walk together, Alice watches the man who was once the center of her world.
Alice reflects that this selfless kindness is the quality she has always loved about Lord Oscar.
Later, Noah rests peacefully in a hospital bed as his fever finally begins to subside.
A knock at the door startles Alice, who is watching over her sleeping son in the quiet room. Oscar enters with a tray, reassuring Alice that the doctor expects a full recovery by tomorrow. Alice expresses her deep gratitude for his help in finding medical care she could actually afford. Oscar insists he was happy to help and presents a teapot filled with a soothing beverage. The knight explains that he has brought some herbal tea for the exhausted mother to drink. Oscar notes the tea is safe for a new mother and will have a relaxing effect on her. Smiling warmly, the knight encourages Alice to drink the tea and get some much-needed rest. Their hands briefly touch as the teacup is exchanged, a moment charged with unspoken history. A warm memory surfaces of a past tea time shared between the two lovers in happier days. Alice takes a long drink of the herbal tea, feeling its warmth spread through her body. She lets out a soft sigh, finally feeling some of the immense tension leave her frame. Seeing her relax, Oscar expresses his genuine pleasure that she is finally feeling a bit better. Oscar mentioned seeing her struggle with a diaper earlier, noting how difficult parenting appears to be. Alice explains that Noah is 9 months old and she is more used to things now. Oscar repeats the baby's age with a thoughtful expression as the math begins to settle in his mind. Alice's eyes widen in sudden alarm as she realizes her casual comment might reveal her secret identity. Alice fears Lord Oscar will calculate Noah's age and realize the truth about their shared past. Looking at the baby, Alice worries that Noah's resemblance to Oscar will reveal her true identity. The dread of exposure intensifies as Alice imagines the knight finally realizing who she actually is. Alice panics that Oscar will realize Noah is his own child as the knight speaks thoughtfully. Oscar considers that the infant's hair color looks like his own while Alice watches him fearfully. A transition concludes the chapter as the narrative prepares to explore the fallout of discovery.